you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So, JJ, thank you for that amazing introduction. For a second, I was like, who is he talking about? Oh, it's me. So my name is Deondra Wardelle. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm so excited to be with you today. Before I get into my presentation, I need to take care of a few housekeeping things. My mom says whenever you're invited somewhere, always show good manners. And although she's not here, I don't want her to, smack me on my hand from a distance. So a few thank yous. First and foremost, I have to thank Team Emotional Support. That was the team that I was a part of during this trivia. So Shauna, Nick, and Sue, thank you for being amazing. I'll be looking to you. If I crack a dry joke, I expect you to laugh if no one else does. No pressure. Also to the KaiNexicon team. I'm not going to call names because I don't want to miss anyone, but my entire experience with KaiNexicon, when you talk about an organization that practices what it preaches, that's KaiNexicon. And throughout my journey in continuous improvement, and especially with the work I have been doing, connecting strategic planning, or what I call strategic visioning, continuous improvement to the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, when other organizations were very silent, KaiNexicon raised their hand and have said, what can we do to support this work? And they have done it in the most kind, engaging, and supportive way. So I am a huge fan of KaiNexicon, and I'm excited to be here at this user conference. But before we go any further, can we give the entire KaiNexicon team a big hand? Yes. And also to the users who are here, I'm so excited that we're together. If there were, no users to do the connecting, what would we be doing with KaiNexicon? So thank you all for being here. So with all that being said, I think I've taken care of my housekeeping. So you all, if you talk to my mom, tell her I was minding my manners. So what are we here to talk about today? How the strategic visioning experience advances inclusion and engagement. So the goal is to look at strategic planning through a different lens, a lens of connecting policy with continuous improvement and cultivating an environment where inclusion and engagement thrives, where everyone feels like they belong and they're part of the vision. So in order to do that, we have to identify opportunities for growth and differentiation. We need to ensure that we're optimizing resources, we're improving communication, and then, of course, that we're bolstering inclusion and engagement. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Inquiring minds want to know. I won't be sharing any data from the National Enquirer. Some of you may not even know what the National Enquirer is. I'm dating myself, but some other questions we want answers to. Then, in this world of different terms that we hear about, I want to cover some foundational terminology to ensure that we're all on the same page. I want to talk about the benefits of strategic visioning, and then the goal is to immediately apply what you learn. You will actually have homework. Can you believe it? You're coming to a conference and you're getting assigned homework? Okay, you're laughing. That's a good thing. And it's good. It's easy. You'll be able to do it. And then not only apply what you learn, but continuously improve and keep moving on to the next thing that it is for you to accomplish related to your strategic vision. So, there are important questions. When it comes to strategic planning, there's always a question that we need to answer. What does the future hold for our organization? What role does our company or our organization play in the community? Of course, in a continuous improvement, a question that we often ask, what problem are we trying to solve? What opportunities lie in waiting? How do we create and sustain an environment of engaging and belonging? That's so important because whatever task or whatever it is we need to accomplish, it doesn't magically happen on its own. We need people to help us execute. And then a question that I love to ask senior leaders: what keeps you up at night? What makes your stomach and your chest tighten up on Sunday nights that make you dread Monday morning? Okay? So these are the questions that we want to keep in mind. And I was trying to decide which story to tell you, so I'm going to tell you 2 stories, and I'll be really brief, and I'm keeping my eye on the timekeeper. So the question that I asked about what keeps you up at night. In one of my past lives, I worked as I forget the title, but it was along the lines of a global continuous improvement director, global Lean Six Sigma director. And my team and we had responsibilities of all the continuous improvement activities for 70 facilities in North America, Europe, and Asia. But what we found is what we thought were priorities and what we thought we should focus in terms of the continuous improvement projects based on what we saw didn't align with what was important to management. There was a disconnect on priorities, and therefore there was a disconnect with alignment. And so I remember calling he was the senior VP, he was the acting CEO, and one day I said, hey, I won't say his name to protect the innocent, but it was a good conversation, and I will call him David. And I said, hey, David, let me ask you a question. He said, sure, Deondra, what's up? I said, tell me, because we didn't have a strategic plan in place for the organization as big as we were. And I asked him, I said, what keeps you up at night and makes you dread coming into work Monday morning? And he paused, and he answered by saying, I'm concerned about how it is that we can drive efficiency in a way where our customers don't have issues with the product they receive. And he said, I'm also concerned about creating opportunities for advancement for the employees. It's really important. I want all the employees to feel like they belong. He said, but what keeps me up at night is what's best for our customers and what's best for our employees. And I was like, okay. So I want you to remember that. The second story is I was the vice president of human resources and continuous improvement at a nonprofit organization that was focused on membership engagement. And there was one department, or there was one committee that was led by a past board president. And with that committee, they weren't aligned to the goals. The committee was the International Membership Committee. And what they found is that international membership was waning. When we had our annual meetings, they spent tens of thousands of dollars for the international member luncheon. Very few people came. And so there were so many disconnects. And so I asked that leader, I said, okay, we have a problem here, but what is the priority? What's important to international members, if that is an area of focus? And she couldn't answer that question. So 2 very important questions that started us on our journey of building a strategic vision. So I'm going to answer what happened later, because you feel like you're on a cliffhanger right now? You want to find out what happened? Okay, good. The story served its purpose. Okay, so we're going to come back to that. So another question to answer. What makes strategic planning difficult? So I'm curious. I wanted to do a quick poll by show of hands. We're going to do this old-fashioned. So based on your experiences, what it is that you know, what you've participated in, is it getting started? Is that what makes it difficult? Show of hands. Okay, see one hand. What about a vague vision, purpose, and mission? Is that what makes strategic planning? Okay, ooh, quite a few hands. Okay, number 3, priorities seem overwhelming. Okay. How do we operationalize diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, where it's a part of everything in our strategic plan and not a one-off? Do we see that as something that's a little challenging? Okay. All right. So that's my unofficial poll, but guess what I find? It aligns with a poll that I did on LinkedIn with other professionals, such as yourself. And just like by show of hands here, the number one thing is a vague vision, purpose, and mission. So just like, that question that I started with asking those leaders, when we do strategic planning, it is so important that we have clarity, that we're able to see ultimately where is it where we need to go. That is the first step. So I want to step back a little bit and kind of go over some terminology to ensure that, because I'm going to reference some of these words throughout our talk today. And again, I want to make sure that we all have the same meaning. Is that okay? All righty. So, earlier there was a talk, when I was telling you about these problems that these leaders had, two common denominators was there was a disconnect and there wasn't alignment. And it's so important that this work that we do, we're always on the same page. We don't jump to conclusions. We don't make assumptions. We don't just hope that people understand what we mean. It's so important that we are in line. And as it relates to, what it is we're starting with, and with being cutting edge in our businesses and whatever it is that we're wanting to accomplish with our strategic plan, it's important that we have the same frame of reference. So with these words, and you're welcome to take a picture of these slides. I'm not going to read them word for word, but I'll give you a moment to kind of go through them, and then I'll give you my definition and example of them. So on this slide, the words are diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So with diversity is the multi-dimensionality of people, a range of human differences, and it's what makes us unique. And when I worked at an electronic repair company, we were a global company. There were people represented from all backgrounds all over the world. We were very diverse in our representation and the customers we worked with. Equity is providing everyone with what is required to achieve success. When I was at that electronic repair company, one of my responsibilities, or one of my titles, I was a Lean Six Sigma training manager. And what we decided, myself and site management, that it was important for people to learn about Lean and learn about continuous improvement. Well, I discovered some training material that was available, but the training material was only designed for members of management. And at that time, management primarily consisted of white men. Nothing wrong with that. White men need to learn about Lean Six Sigma as well, but it was so important for everyone to be able to have exposure to this information. So that's what equity is about, giving everyone the opportunity to be successful. So what we did is we modified that training so that whether you were brand new to the company, if you were in engineering, if you managed someone, or if you didn't, you were able to take advantage of that training. Okay, does that make sense? So inclusion is a sense of belonging. So realizing that adults learn in different ways, the training was originally designed to be taken online only. And it was an electronic repair company, so we had repair technicians that were in noisy work areas where it would be difficult to concentrate on content. So we offered classroom training. Within the training room, we designed study carrels where people could come and study and have quiet time together. And then the other thing that was really important, we had an employee who was hearing impaired. So we brought in an interpreter to do American Sign Language. So that is an example of how inclusion, we want to make sure everyone, no matter what it is, that they could take advantage of that training. And then in terms of accessibility, accessibility is when the needs of people with varying abilities are specifically considered. And there's consideration when it comes to products, services, the facilities we build, everything, regardless of a person's abilities, we want them to have access to it. And so that's the example that I gave about offering an interpreter for someone who was hearing impaired so they could take advantage of the training, okay? Next set of definitions: engagement, accountability, and innovation. Okay, employee engagement is the strength of mental and emotional connection employees feel toward their workplaces, okay? Work feels like a second home. Accountability means being answerable to the actions and decisions made by you and those you lead. Accountability is a two-way street between management and team members. And then finally, innovation. Innovation is introducing new ideas and methods that lead to success. So in the example that I shared about how it is that we put the continuous improvement training in the hands of everyone, can you imagine what an organization looks like when everyone is introduced to continuous improvement, when everyone has an opportunity to bring their suggestions forward, to do different projects, to take us from current state to future state. Can you imagine what happened? Our site blew all of the goals out of the water. And people where previously we had challenges in recruiting and people advancing and getting promoted, that was no longer an issue. Of course, we still had minor, the things that we deal with in human resources, but it was a flourishing, thriving environment because we had a clear vision that we wanted everyone to have access to the training, and then we did the work. We looked at the system, we looked at the different principles, we looked at the rules, we looked at the requirements to ensure that everyone had access and everyone could be successful. Okay, that's enough of terminology. So when it comes to looking at traditional planning compared to what we're talking about here with strategic visioning, there are some of the things that we need to take into consideration as a part of starting the process, okay? So for one, with traditional planning, there's too much emphasis placed on perfectionism. Are you all wondering, Deondra, what do you mean by perfectionism? I see a few people nodding your heads, okay? So with perfectionism, as little time, energy, or money is put into reflection. We want everything to be absolutely perfect. And the difference with strategic visioning is where we're looking at developing a culture that values mistakes. Mark Graben, who is speaking tomorrow, I'm giving you a shameless plug, Mark, because I absolutely love your podcast, My Favorite Mistake, is geared at looking at mistakes that we make as leaders, not to beat ourselves up, but to see what we've learned from it and how is it that we can improve. And so that is so important when we look at how it is we do traditional strategic planning, because some of the reasons why strategic planning in its traditional form really doesn't work is because sometimes we're looking at the wrong measurements, we're unclear about the direction we're trying to go in, there's poor communication, and there's poor alignment between what is important to leaders and how that's communicated throughout the organization, okay? Another one, sense of urgency. Everything is important right now. The world is on fire. We've got to do this, and that. I appreciated Greg's slide earlier with the fire going on in the background. It looked like it was Heat Miser on there. Again, I'm dating myself from a cartoon. But you know why? Everything is a fire. And the thing about when we have this continuous sense of urgency, it makes it difficult for us to take the time to be inclusive. We don't take the time to look and see whose input do we need to get, who should be at the table and they're not at the table. So with strategic visioning, one of the things that it helps us to appreciate is looking at realistic work plans and focusing on progress over perfection. Then we have quantity over quality. Things that can be measured are more highly valued than things that cannot be, like we measure how many people are attending a meeting, how many people are getting the newsletter, looking at just those numbers without connecting it to a relationship or connecting it to the vision of what's important. So with strategic visioning, we want to make sure that our organization has value statements, which expresses the ways in which we want to do the work, how it is we treat our communities, how it is that we treat our employees. And like Greg was talking about, it comes back to that why. There's only one right way. We have to do it this way. There's nothing else that we can consider. With strategic visioning, what's important is for us to realize that there can be more than one way to evaluate things. And that we work together and determine, well, what one thing do we want to try now? What can we learn from it? And then how can we improve upon it? And then paternalism, what does that mean? Decision-making is clear to those in power, but it's unclear to those without power. So those who were at the meeting, who were at the table, who were part of the strategic plan, they're crystal clear on what needs to be done. But if you weren't in that meeting, you have no idea what's going on. And so that's why it's important that we want to make sure that the decisions we make include the folks who are being affected by them. So that either or thinking, things are either good or bad. They're right or wrong. It's us against them. And what we should do when we look at things from a strategic visioning standpoint is slow down and analyze data and take our time and really think about what is it that we're observing. And then, the fear of open conflict, when someone raises an issue that could cause discomfort, we want to shy away from it, okay? That's what usually happens in some of our traditional planning processes. And what we want to move towards is where, yes, we need to be polite and we need to demonstrate respect and show tact, but at the same time, raising hard issues is not a bad thing. Pointing out mistakes that we make, it's not a bad thing because those are opportunities for learning. And then individualism, that's little experience or comfort, with having more than one person work on something. Only one person needs to do all the work. Instead of no I in team, we throw an I in team, all right? There is a lack of accountability, but with strategic visioning, it's about including teamwork as an important value in the value statement. So, where to begin? It all begins with a vision. And so, how many, by show of hands, are familiar with the Toyota Kata? Okay. So, Toyota Kata is part of work from Mike Rother's research. And he looked at how it is managers at Toyota develop and empower their teams. And Kata literally means a way of doing. And I remember when I first was introduced to the Toyota Kata, it was like a light bulb went off. So when you look at the steps of the Kata, it's a matter of connecting strategy and execution. It's connecting policy deployment, which is a lot of what we do with our strategic planning, our Hoshin or whatever it is that we're developing to set forth our plan for the future. But it also is important to connect people and the development of people. So in the first step, or the first part of the process, it's about the vision and the challenge. And Mike Rother asked a question that I absolutely love in terms of framing the challenge. Wouldn't it be great if? Thinking about the big thing of whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish as it relates to delighting our customers. And that vision is connected to why are we in business? Why is it that we produce the products we produce? Why is it that we offer the services that we do? That's part of the strategy, okay? But what good is having a strategy and no execution? What good is having an engagement and you don't get to the wedding? That may be good or bad. We can talk about that later offline, okay? But that's where it begins. And then from there, then you go and look at the current condition. You identify what your next target is. And you're moving in these small iterative steps to progress from where you are to where you want to be. But it all begins with that vision. Greg talked about this earlier in the welcome, the why. KaiNexicon, as part of your existence, it's about doing the jobs easier, doing the work that matters, validating someone, reminding someone that they're important. It's about connecting that policy deployment to people development. Okay? And the thing about, if we look at KaiNexus, their vision is to get more done every day, and they're looking to connect us. So no matter where I imagine the KaiNexus team is in their work, it always takes them back to that vision, that wouldn't it be great, what it is that they're working toward in their daily work. So, wouldn't it be great? That is the first question to start with when we do our strategic planning, when we do our strategic visioning. We want to understand where is it ultimately that we want to go. So, with strategic visioning, it starts out with, as we're looking to develop our strategic planning processes of where we want to be 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years, it's good to understand that direction or challenge, like what's in that first step of the Kata. So we need to dream it. We need to have a vision. We want a clarified vision statement connected to our why. What is our inspiration? Why do we get out of bed every morning to do the things we do? Why is it that we go into the factory and do the things we do? There's something that drives us, and oftentimes that why is connected to our customer, our external customer and our internal customer, our teammates. So then we need to discern it. What is discerning about? That's doing an assessment. We want to ensure that we have a good understanding of how business is operating right now, because as a result of understanding where we are in relation to where we're going, that gives us alignment. And it's so important that we cascade that alignment throughout every level of our organization. And then, of course, we want to develop it, okay? We want to have those SMART objectives that help us in our planning of going from this vision to the actual execution. And in the slide I showed you earlier with the Toyota Kata, it connects strategy and execution, and that's part of the work. And then we have to do it, and it's a matter of building in those habits. What is it we do every day? From the mistakes that we make, what is it that we learn? From the experiments that we want to test, the things that we want to try, what is it we learn? How is it that we execute? And then how do we continuously improve? And then that cycle continues as we work closer and closer in working towards what our vision is. So, you know, being a continuous improvement organization, and I know KaiNexicon is heavily DMAIC, you know, in terms of define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. There's a lot of connections between that and the plan, do, check, act cycle. And what I appreciate about, you know, no matter where we are in the world, no matter what work it is that we're doing, continuous improvement applies. It starts out with having that vision, having that alignment, and with all of the work it is that we need to do, no matter what is on our strategic plan, it begins with, you know, planning things out, clarifying that problem, breaking it down, setting a target of ultimately where we want to be, okay? Getting to the root cause. Part of getting to the root cause, yes, we need to analyze data, but we also don't want to jump to conclusions. And we constantly want to go to the heart and go and see what is going on within the areas where we work, where our team members are, and understand things from their perspective. Going in with a fresh set of eyes to learn, not to go in and tell, okay? And then, of course, we want to, you know, come up with the actions. We want to come up with those things that we need to do. We want to do them. We want to pilot them. We want to start out small. Instead of, you know, introducing some broad, sweeping change across the organization, what is the model line? What is the process? What is the one department we can start in with whatever it is we want to implement? And then we just don't put these things in motion and hope they work. We want to go back and check. We want to make sure that they actually work. And if they didn't, whatever it is that we planned, whether it's in our strategic plan and those individual tactics that we have that are a part of our plan, if they don't go as what we expected, well, then what should we do? Do we stop? Do we give up? Do we take our marbles and go home? Absolutely not. We look at what we've learned from when that experiment didn't go as we expected, or when we've made that mistake, and then we build on that. And it's the case when things did go as we expect them to do, well, how can we make sure that stays in place and that we continue to build on that? So, the connection between strategic visioning and, you know, continuous improvement and operationalizing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the difference between traditional strategic planning and what I've been sharing with you today, it comes back to the dreaming and doing. Connecting that vision and aspiration with the specifics. So in the story that I shared earlier about David, the one who I asked what keeps him up at nights, what makes him dread coming in on Monday mornings. So what we did is we decided to do, he was not a fan of using lean terms. He was not a fan of an X matrices. He did not like the term strategic planning. So we just called it a strategy and alignment workshop. That worked. I did whatever we needed to do to get our foot in the door. And we brought in representatives of the leadership team from all over the different aspects of the organization. And we started out with casting a vision. And guess what question I asked them? Wouldn't it be great if? Okay? And so from there, starting with the senior level of leadership, we then identified what were the organizational priorities. And then we took it down and we went to the divisional priorities, what was most important, to department strategic priorities. And ultimately that tied into the performance review goals, the daily work and the actions of the employees. okay? So if you notice, the arrows are going up and down because there was constantly a back and forth and a communication. But one of the things that was important is what was identified as priorities from the senior level trickled down to every employee in the organization so that we knew what was noise and what was a priority and what was related to our daily work. And so in that particular story about, when I asked David what keeps him up at night, because there was alignment, then among the continuous improvement team, as we were supporting operations, we also had a clear vision. So we weren't coming up with, we think we should be working on this. We were all aligned in the work that we needed to do. And so, like Greg talked about earlier, with senior leadership, we have to look at those numbers, because if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And so what ended up happening is our projections in terms of a number of the goals that we set, especially around profitability and reducing errors, goals that we had set by the end of the year, we had achieved them by Q2. And we went back and revisited, okay, well, what's next on this journey? In the story that I shared with you all about working at the nonprofit, the membership organization, when we took the same process and began to engage our international members and asked what was a priority to them, you know what their first response was? They were in shock. They said, no one ever asked us for our input. They were so excited to be part of the planning process. And as a result of that, we were smarter about what it is we set as priorities, the work that we did. We ended up saving money the next year on the annual meeting because what we found is that luncheon, no one who was a member internationally actually attended. So that money was better used for something else. So it's so important that as leaders we cast that vision and that we continuously communicate back and forth to ensure that's alignment and to help employees see where they fit in. Now, one question you may be asking, Deondra, you talked about diversity, equity, inclusion. What does that have to do with strategic visioning? Well, let me tell you. When you are in an environment where it is clear what it is your responsibilities are, you understand ultimately where the organization is going, what the priorities are, you see your connection to that vision, and not only that, you're able to share ideas about what's important. You're able to give feedback. You're able to say, hey, I have a wouldn't it be great idea. I want to share it, and I want to apply continuous improvement as the method to execute where we are and where we're trying to be. What better way to show inclusion? What better way to empower people? Can you all think of a time when you worked in an organization where you felt like, I have an idea to share, but it'll fall on deaf ears. No one will listen. Can anyone relate to that? Okay. How did it feel to be in that type of environment? No words for us. Not so good. Okay, but think about, no matter if it was a volunteer organization or where you work, if you felt like you had an idea and you didn't have to sugarcoat it, you could be very direct because people knew you were coming from a place of you wanted betterment, for the organization, for your clients, that your idea was connected to the why, and people listened to it and they acted on it. What did that feel like? Amazing. It's great. And so that is the goal of what it is that we should be looking at with this work, with the work of not only developing our strategic plans, but developing them in such a way that we look around and see who's at the table, who's not at the table. The actions that are being determined, who are they, is it feeling like it's something being done to them or they're a part of it? One of the things that I so appreciate as I study this KaiNexicon team, I study you all just in case you didn't know, is that you can tell there is an environment of inclusion and engagement, and they're intentional. They are practicing what they're teaching about they want to connect us because they're doing it internally. That icebreaker that we did, that trivia game, was so new, so out of the box, and so creative. Tapping into the talent that we have in our organization to accomplish our goal, like to have a significant and successful, user conference involves letting everyone show their talents and being involved and being engaged, no matter if it's their first time, second time, or whatever, realizing everyone has a voice. And that is what we should be working towards in the work that we're doing with our strategic planning, emphasizing that inclusion, because with that inclusion, with that engagement, comes innovation. And we think of things that we've never thought of before, connected to the vision, connected to the why, and connected to what's important to our customers. So, here's the call to action. Part of your homework, y'all ready? What is important is that we empower, we engage. It begins with that vision, but then we execute. And we're specific, we're measurable, we're action-oriented, we're realistic, and time-based in what it is that we want to do. So in terms of, looking at how can we have SMART goals tied to our vision that's connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. Specific, what problem are we trying to solve? What opportunity is in waiting? For measurable, what does success look like and how will we measure it? What's action-oriented? Being as clear and specific as possible about the next steps that we need to make. And then when it's realistic, is it something feasible? Let's not overwhelm ourselves with saying, oh, we need to take this huge big bite, this huge big leap. We're looking at these 3-year, 5-year plans, but we need to be really strategic and smart and realistic about what's the next smallest step I can take to learn something and get us closer to what it is we're trying to achieve. And of course, it should be time-based. Just setting something out there and hoping that it comes to fruition, more than likely what's going to happen? Nothing. And that adds to the frustration of our customers we serve internally, our employees and externally, if we just put things out there and there's no date associated. When we can put a date on something that says, oh, this has value, and it gives us something to work towards, okay? So, I'm going to give you, this is your homework, some reflection, okay? What I want you to think about is, how can focusing on strategic planning with an emphasis on lean, with an emphasis on continuous improvement, and in terms of what we're looking to do as far as advancing engagement and inclusion and providing service to the communities, to our customers, to those that we're in business for, our why, how can this benefit your organization's growth? So thinking about that whole ball of wax, from the visioning to the execution, from the dreaming to the doing, how can that have a good impact on your organization? And not only thinking about it externally in terms of the customers and the communities where you are based, but also internally, members of your team. So then, the next question, this is so important. By May 26th, after we've gone, because I know there's going to be so many epiphanies, there's going to be so much great learning these next few days. I want you to soak it in and really think about it. I want you to walk out of this conference and have this question answered. Wouldn't it be great if, and there's a fill in the blank, and there's a specific date. And that date is so important. You all want to know why May 26th is important? May 26th is my birthday, okay? So this will be your birthday gift to me, okay? In lieu of money and, jewelry and things like that. This is more important. If you can answer this, wouldn't it be great if, within your circle of influence, within your area of responsibility, what is your wouldn't it be great? Ultimately, what is it that you would like to accomplish a year from now? And from understanding and thinking about that, then follow these steps that we've gone through to determine what will be your next small step that you can take and keep building upon that. So, I think we have enough time for a Q&A. Okay, good. If we are not connected on social media, you can scan that QR code. It takes you directly to my LinkedIn page where, we can continue this conversation if we run out of time for Q&A. And also, I believe in what KaiNexicon talks about, connecting us. We're all continuous improvement professionals in the business of making this world a better place through what it is we do in our daytime, our 9 to 5, and how we engage in the community. And I look forward to learning from you. So you are welcome to, like I said, connect with me on LinkedIn or any of the other places where you might find me on social media. Okay. I thank you so much for your time and attention. Again, if you have questions, I'll be here for the next all day and tomorrow, and feel free to reach out to me. So thank you, everyone.